Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're discussing focus group questionnaire development. Here is a refresher on focus groups. They are a research method that collects qualitative data through group discussions. Its goal is to generate data while observing the interaction and discussion of the participants. What they say is just as important as how they say it. There are multiple types of focus groups, such as telefocus groups, mini groups, triads, internet focus groups, and video focus groups. Whether you decide to use one of these variations depends on your research questions and budget. For this video, we will focus on how to create the best questions possible for your research topic. We will discuss types of focus group questions as well as tips and tricks you can use when developing your questions. This is the second step after deciding what your sample will be, and it needs to be done carefully to avoid influencing the participants' responses. The order of the questions also has a purpose. It will help the participants feel at ease and open up. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's start with the types of focus group questions. So the types of focus group questions that we are going to be discussing in this video are introductory questions, engagement questions, exploration questions, exit questions, open-ended questions, follow-up questions, probing questions, and closed questions.
Introductory questions. Introductory questions are usually open-ended questions aimed at setting the tone for the focus group. They are intended to open your group's interest level and knowledge of the subject or product you will talk about. These questions should steer the discussion in the way you want it to go. Examples of this include, today's topic is fake news consumption. What are your general feelings about it? What do you already know about this product or topic?
Engagement questions. These types of questions are usually asked at the beginning of the focus group. Their purpose is to set the tone of the discussion and establish the topic. Engagement questions also help make the participants feel more comfortable in a focus group setting with the facilitator as well as the other participants. An example of an engagement question is, what is your favorite medium to consume news? Exploration questions. Exploration questions' main purpose is to gain the information you need from the focus group session. These questions will typically take up the majority of the questions during the focus group. And an example of an exploration question is, how often do you consume news virtually?
Exit questions. Exit questions are used to wrap up the focus group discussion, ensuring that nothing has been left unsaid and that all aspects of the topic have been fully covered. Examples of this include, are there any other points you'd like to make about this subject? Would you like to say anything else about X? Is there anything we didn't touch on that you feel is important?
Open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are typically used the most during focus group sessions. They provide an opportunity for participants to answer the questions the way they interpret them and allow for them to express themselves. Open-ended questions also assist with keeping the conversation going among participants in the focus group session. An example of an open-ended question is, what comes to mind when you think of fake news? Follow-up questions. Follow-up questions will inquire further on the response of the initial question asked. Including follow-up questions into your interview guide will help you lead the discussion in your focus group session, but they can also be improvised. Depending on what information you are trying to gather, you can ask what something means, how something happened, why something happened, and what the participant did about it. An example of a main question that will be followed by a follow-up question is, what is your favorite medium to consume news? And the follow-up question would be, why is that your favorite medium?
Probing questions. Probing questions are used after a main or follow-up question has been answered in order for participants to clarify their answers. They allow us to dig deeper, collect more information about a statement, clarify anything that's unclear, or invite other participants to comment. Examples of this include, what do you mean when you say X? Can you give us a few examples? Has anyone experienced anything similar or different to name?
Lastly, closed questions. Closed questions are the exact opposite of open-ended questions. They do not provide an opportunity for participants to express themselves and are typically looking for a yes or no response. Although they are typically used in quantitative survey research, they can be used in a focus group session to allow for clarification and confirmation. For example, do you consume news via Twitter?
Tips for making focus group questionnaires. The questionnaire is one of the most important parts of conducting your focus group and should be created prior to the meeting. In this section, you'll learn 4 helpful tips for developing a questionnaire that is strong, explorative, guiding, and conducts good discussions. They are: what do you want out of the focus group? Use precise language. Splitting up larger questions and the order of questions is important. Tip number 1. What do you want out of the focus group? The first tip in questionnaire development is focusing on what information you want out of the focus group itself. Knowing this will guide the types of questions you use as well as the language you use within them. For example, are you trying to understand others' views or solve a problem? Will your questions be more exploratory or focus on checking off a list of questions? Tip number 2, use precise language. When developing the questions, you want to be sure that they are as clear as possible. This involves ensuring your questions aren't too long-winded to be comfortably answered by participants. If your question is too long or contains multiple parts, participants could lose track of the content and only answer parts of it. This will take away from the quality of the data you collect and brings us to our third tip. Tip number 3, split up larger questions. Instead of using long questions with multiple parts, think about follow-up questions you can use to tack on to larger ones. This will allow the participants to fully answer your questions and all of the parts of it without being overwhelmed. They will be able to provide clearer and more direct responses. For example, pick a particular part of the question the participant answered and ask, how do you feel about X in relation to the prior question? Tip number 4, the order is important. The order of your questions should be decided based on the quality and amount of information you're trying to gain. For example, if information is emotionally heavy, you may want to craft questions which slowly lead up to it. This helps participants to not be overwhelmed by the content and build trust in both the host and other participants before becoming more vulnerable, leading to deeper conversations overall.
To sum it all up, focus groups are a research method that allows us not only to obtain data, but analyze the reactions and interactions among the people providing this data. To organize the questions, it is recommended that you start with introductory and engagement questions, exploration questions, and finish with exit questions. It is important to mainly use open-ended questions to allow your participants an opportunity to share their thoughts. Closed questions are typically yes or no answers and will not give you insight. Save those for a survey. Make yourself some notes to ensure you ask your participants follow-up and probing questions to gain the most out of their time. On our next video, we will continue creating our focus groups with some more hands-on examples regarding the execution of the focus groups.